Hello Rebels and welcome back to my life. So I'd like to do a little bit of a follow-up to my last video by talking today about traditional publishing. When I first started writing, it was because I'd started listening to the self-publishing podcast, so it might not be much of a surprise that I decided to go the route of indie publishing. I didn't want to go through the process of finding an agent and then maybe or maybe not getting accepted by a traditional publisher, and then even if I did get accepted, waiting months or possible years for my book to come out and not having any control over it. That's just not how I roll. And even now, after finding some success as an indie, I highly doubt that I would ever take a traditional publishing contract, except in very rare and specific circumstances. Now, this is not to say that traditional publishing is inherently bad. Traditional publishers have done great work with many great books, and in fact, many of my favorite books of all time were traditionally published. Now, you could say that's because indie publishing didn't really exist back when those books were written, but even today, you have great authors like John Green and Chuck Wendig releasing great books through traditional publishing. But there are quite a few pitfalls when it comes to traditional publishing, and if you're trying to start a career as an author, it helps to be aware of them. First of all, not every publishing company is an actual reputable traditional publisher. And let me explain what I mean by that. If a small press company says they want to publish your book, that is like no guarantee of its success. There are a lot of companies out there that prey on up-and-coming authors, taking their book and then doing the absolute bare minimum required to get that book to market. These companies hope that despite their own lack of effort, they will somehow get their hands on a bestseller and then they make their money off of that. If a company wants to publish your book but doesn't want to offer you a cash advance for the rights to that book, you should be very, very cautious of working with them. If a company says they want you to pay them to publish your book, run away. Turn and run away as fast as you can in the other direction and say bad things about them on every social media site in existence. I've actually had multiple online friends tell me that they got their books picked up by a publisher, but that they lost money on the deal. Yeah, no, that scenario is impossible with any honest, reputable publisher. You do not pay them. They pay you. But even a bigger, more reputable publisher won't necessarily work very hard to ensure your book's success. It depends on all kinds of things, like your agent and the editor that you happen to get, and the distributor that you happen to get. This wide variety of other factors. Just as like a general datum, about 40% of traditionally published books lose money, about 40% make their money back, and about 20% are like very successful and make far more than the publisher initially invested in them. Traditional publishers live on that 20%, and if you happen to hit it, then they'll start giving you bigger cash advances on future books and doing more to promote you and like get you distributed into Walmart and airports and stuff. So you could say that getting accepted by an honest, reputable, traditional publisher gives you like a 20% chance of future success as an author. 20% might not sound that great, but it's probably higher than the percentage of people who find long-term success in indie publishing. However, in traditional publishing, that 20% is very luck-based and dependent on the publisher where you happen to get your book accepted. Whereas in indie publishing, it's much more dependent on you, which like may or may not be a good thing. Here's some other things to remember about working with traditional publishers. Especially on your first few books, if you disagree with your editor, too bad. The publisher has the final say on any changes made to your book, and if you prove too difficult to work with, they can and will drop you. If you don't like the book cover that your publisher comes up with, too bad. It's going to print anyway. If you think that the publisher is charging too much for the ebook copy of your book, too bad. You can't control that. Right now, the publisher of The Fellowship of the Ring is charging $7.99 for the paperback edition of that book on Amazon, but the Kindle edition is $9.99. That's stupid, but they do it all the time. Again, I just want to say there are good traditional publishers out there, and there are great authors who are producing great work by working with them. But when you hear an author, especially a big established one who you like and respect, talking about how great their publisher is and how much they love their editor and they couldn't do it without their team, realize that their publisher will not be your publisher, even if you get accepted by the same publishing company. And even in the best case scenario, you are relinquishing a massive amount of control about how your book is going to be published. That might be fine for you. I'm sure most traditional authors don't want to worry about book covers or how to distribute a book online and in physical retail stores. But they also can't complain when something goes wrong, as it frequently seems to. That's it for today, Rebels. An extra special shout out to my supporters on Patreon who make my YouTube channel possible, especially my sponsors, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye!